So why am I saying that we should conduct ourselves in fear? Well, I would say, and you may have heard, that everyone is either serving someone or something. Now, today is the day in America we celebrate our freedom and our independence. We love our independence in America. And we think, I'm not serving anyone. Well, the reality is, everyone is serving someone or something. We all, maybe it's our jobs, maybe it's our families, maybe it's our desire to get more, or desire to have more free time, or desire to do something. There's something that we're serving and that is driving us. And I would say that same thing applies to fear. There is fear in every one of our lives. And fear is not actually completely bad. You think about it, if you didn't fear falling off a cliff, you just walk right off the cliff, and then your time on earth would be short. That'd be it, right? God actually gave us the concept of fear for a very good reason and for a purpose. So fear is not bad. It's just that we need to fear the right things. We shouldn't be fearing the wrong things. So there are a lot of things on earth that hold us back. And those are the kind of fears that God is not calling us to. And so I just want to be very clear, when I'm talking about conducting ourselves in fear, I'm not talking about being afraid of everything that comes our way. But I'm talking about being afraid of the right things. And what is the right thing? The right thing to fear is the ultimate judge. Because remember, our time on earth has a defined limit to it. There will come a point where we will face a judgment, and we will have to go before the judge and give an accounting for our life and how we lived it, as short as it was. And that is something that we should fear. Like, we should say, am I ready for this? Am I accumulating evidence so that I can go before the judge? There was a sign in a church I grew up in that said, if being a Christian was a crime, would there be enough evidence to convict you? So you think about that as you go before the judge. If you go before the judge, what's the evidence you're going to bring? Now, I just want to say, the evidence is not, well, I did this, and I'm such a good person, and I went to church every Sunday. God's not going to, the ultimate judge is not going to be impressed by that evidence. In fact, the only evidence that we have to present before the judge is that of Jesus Christ and His sacrifice, and that we have accepted that in our lives and allowed that to be the thing that defines who we are. So, who is to conduct themselves in fear? The verse says that those of us who address the ultimate judge as our Father. I love this. Sorry, I have to keep turning back because the page, every time I look down, it's on a different page. It says, the very beginning of 17, if you address as Father the one who impartially judges. So we have this ultimate judge who also, as followers of Jesus, we can call as our Father. Jesus said in Matthew 11:27, no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal Him. So we can know the judge, the Father, through the Son, through Jesus Christ. So what do we have to fear? The reality that God is actually going to judge each of our works. He's going to judge our lives. And that is honestly a pretty intimidating thought. And honestly, I think it should be an intimidating thought. I think that's the right thing for us to fear. Am I living my life in a worthy manner? Am I living my life in a way that would please and honor Jesus Christ? These are the right questions to ask. But there's also some assurance in that passage. And you'd see this in that the way the judge is described, not only as our Father, but also as impartial. And I think that's pretty significant. I don't know if you know about this in our American system, but not all the judges are impartial. Some of them are biased. Some of them, if I was to be convicted, I would not want to go before that judge because I'm not sure how they would rule. Some of them don't have this same regard for the laws of the land as others. But what we know about this judge, God, is that He is impartial. So we can know that we're going to get a fair trial and a fair fair hearing and a fair judgment. We can know that that when we go before Him, we don't have to wonder what that's going to be like. For those, if you practice the Muslim faith, they believe in a judgment too. And when they go before Allah, they believe that they're supposed to do all these good works on earth. And then when they go to judgment, they still don't know if they're going to get into heaven or not, or paradise, as they call it. There is no sense of impartiality. It seems almost whimsical, like flipping a coin. Yes or no? Is it going to happen? And so we can recognize that we have an impartial judge, and we'll get a fair trial. So, does it mean we're just supposed to kind of live our lives in fear and tremoring all day, all our lives? No, thankfully, and I'll give you 2 reasons from these verses. The first reason is that, I've kind of hinted to this, but we address this ultimate judge as also our Father. We've been adopted into His family through Christ's sacrifice. I read that passage in Colossians about He transferred us from one kingdom, the kingdom of darkness, into the kingdom of His beloved Son. And He didn't just transfer us in a kingdom and make us a loyal subject, but He actually adopted us into His family. And through Christ's sacrifice, we can now call God not only our judge, which He still is, but also our Father. And He's a good Father. His character is good and true. And so we don't have to live in fear because of that. Our judge is also our Father. But also, secondly, we conduct ourselves not only in fear, but also knowing, let me go back, I need a paperweight or something. Knowing the second part of this in verse 18, knowing not only that we should live in fear of the judge, but knowing that we were redeemed. That we were redeemed. And so we lived, this passage says we lived a futile way of life. And futile means it was devoid of force. It had no power behind it, had no truth behind it. There was no success, there was no result. I don't know about you, but I've experienced times in my life where it seems pretty futile. No power, no truth, no success, no result. And that's the way of life without Christ. And we've been redeemed from that. Uselessness, no purpose. I was just talking to a young man the other day. He's struggling with some depression. Unfortunately, that's not an uncommon thing right now. And as I was talking with his life, I recognized he had no relationship with Jesus Christ. Well, it's no surprise to me that then you would be depressed and you have no purposefulness, because where are you going to find purpose in your life if you are trying to live for yourself instead of trying to live for the Creator? So we were redeemed out of that futile life. And this futile life is something that it's a family curse, if you will. It's been handed down from generation to generation to generation. We didn't learn this futility on our own. We were born with it. You can go all the way back to Adam. And when he made that decision to sin against God, to choose his own way instead of God's way, his life became futility. And that's been passed down to us. Now, if you think about in history, and even you can think in your life, hopefully your life, there are clearly people who have lived purpose-filled, useful lives. Some, and not just believers, there are some who didn't know Christ. How did they do it? I would say most of them found purpose in their faith, and that faith drove them to do amazing things throughout history. We could do a whole historical study on that. There are a few people who also found purpose in maybe a higher ideal or a concept of truth that wouldn't necessarily be under the Christian faith. But I would tell you that there was something bigger and better than themselves that gave them purpose and meaning. And if it wasn't rooted in faith, it usually ends up in disaster. So you can look at certain movements. I would even say, if you look at communism, the concept of communism is actually a great concept. Everybody works together, everybody shares a load, everybody contributes, everybody gets their needs met, get what they need. It's a wonderful concept. But here's the problem. Human nature. Because who decides who gets what? And who decides what equal load means? And who decides who's dispersing? And so even that ideal, when it's not rooted in faith in Jesus Christ, it falls apart. So, thankfully, the futile way of life is not the only option. So Peter tells us here in these verses to conduct ourselves knowing that we have been redeemed. That we've been redeemed for a new way of life. We don't have to keep living in that futile way. We were redeemed to have purpose and significance. And these verses tell us that our cost of our redemption was costly. It says it cost more than silver or gold. So I had to check. I looked up an ounce of silver when I checked was $25.89. So a pound of silver was $414.24. So if you have silver, that's where that is. An ounce of gold, just 1 ounce of gold, is $1,789.50. So a pound of gold, you only got a pound of gold? Don't raise your hand because people might look for you. $28,632 for just a pound. So that sounds like a lot of money, right? Or maybe a few more pounds, but this Scripture says that our redemption is more costly than that. We're redeemed, it says, with blood. Well, what's the price of blood? I'm not talking about being a blood donor or donating plasma even. I'm talking about how do you put a price tag on a life? It's pretty hard to do, isn't it? What is a life worth? And if I take that one step further, how do you put a price tag on a perfect life? The absolute perfection of life. What's the price of that? Well, when sacrifices were still happening in the temple in Jerusalem, in order to have the sins atoned for in the Jewish system of sacrifice, atoned for meaning it had to be taken care of or removed or covered over, a perfect lamb would have to be sacrificed. So that means if you were a lamb farmer, a shepherd, I guess is what you are, you can't just grab any lamb from your flock. Be like, oh, this one will work. You have to go through your flock. You have to dig through it, and you have to find the most perfect, spotless, clean, no stains, no broken bones. You have to find that lamb, and that's the one that has to be sacrificed. It had to be the most, in fact, if you were taking it to market, it would be the one that you get the most money for. The most costly animal in your herd. But the problem is it's still just an animal. So every year, there had to be another sacrifice. And sometimes more often, but every year they did one, but continual sacrifices would have to be made. This was not a freeing redemption. When they're sacrificing lamb, there's a redemption, but then you got to do it again and again. It was a temporary redemption. But God made a way for our redemption to be permanent. And for that to happen, it would require a better sacrifice, a more perfect sacrifice than the best lamb ever. And be more costly than a huge pile of silver and gold. What kind of sacrifice would that be? Our verses this morning tell us that it was precious blood. And precious can mean very costly, like a pile of silver or gold. And that's certainly true about this blood. But precious here more specifically means held in honor, esteemed, and especially dear. So this blood is most highly esteemed because it is the blood of God's own Son. There is no sacrifice more honorable than this sacrifice, because Jesus willingly allowed himself to be sacrificed. He didn't get kind of pushed in like God say, hey, you go take care of this. And Jesus say, no, I don't want to do it. He willingly went. And I think the most beautiful picture of this is in the Garden of Gethsemane, because it cost him something. Right before he was about to be sacrificed, Jesus was praying and he said, Father, I don't want to do this. This is not my will. This is not the thing I would choose. But I want to do what you would please you. And so I'm willing to do it. I'm willingly going. He didn't say, oh, it's no big deal, I'll do it. No, it cost him literally his life. It cost him separation between his loving and perfect Father. It cost him having that place at the right hand of the Father. He gave all of that up willingly. So the sacrifice of Jesus was precious indeed, because it was perfect. And because of that, it can redeem us once for all time. We don't have to keep making sacrifices. We don't have to go raid a lamb farm somewhere. We don't need to sacrifice again and again. Jesus did it once for all. And so this should influence the way we live. By the fact that, first of all, our actions are going to be judged by God. So we do need to conduct ourselves with fear. But also that we have been redeemed by Christ, and so we can call God our Father. That's a joyous thing. And we have to live those two things in tension of our lives. So my charge for us this morning is, first of all, live like you will be judged, because you will. Don't worry about humans, worry about God. But also live like you've been redeemed, because you have been. Or you can be if you haven't been. Jesus Christ died to redeem everyone willing to receive Him. And so we can live in this freedom, not just because we live in America, but because we live under the banner of Christ and His love. And we can rejoice in that. We live accountable. We have to face a judge. We have some fear of the right things, but we also live redeemed, and that gives us great freedom.